Our resident counseling therapist, Dr. David McKenzie, is waiting to explain what makes that ugly, jealous serpent tick. Author Erica Jong once said, "Jealousy is all the fun you think they had." If you have experienced this emotion, you know it can be crippling, crazy-making, hurtful, and slightly irrational. Dr. David McKenzie is our resident couples counselor and sex therapist, and it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. David McKenzie back to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Morning, Fanny.
Morning. Jealousy. Well, I assume everyone is jealous to some degree at some time.
I think jealousy has an evolutionary purpose. I think jealousy is more a problem with men. I think they experience it more in the sense that if you look at the salmon spawning in the Adams River, you'll find that the male, once he has fertilized the female's eggs, will sit with that female until he dies because he wants to be sure that his DNA gets into the genetic pool. And I think that's a lot of deep primordial stuff that comes from us. But jealousy is different from envy. Envy is much more a lusting after, a coveting of what somebody else has.
Like their Rolls Royce,
their
or
Rolls
their
Royce.
big house on the water.
Right, or their nice hair or whatever.
Or their great legs.
Or their great legs. Whereas jealousy comes from a different place psychologically. If you follow jealousy back, it'll take you probably to your deepest wound, your deepest hurt, which usually is abandonment.
And to me, jealousy is a feeling. It's a feeling. When you're jealous, you feel it in your gut.
Oh, sure you do. Have you ever noticed that emotions are in vogue at different times in human history? 100 years ago, when my mom and dad or my grandparents were dating, jealousy was part of the relationship. If you weren't jealous, it meant you didn't love your partner as much. But anger and men crying, that was out. Now, you want a sensitive man who will cry. You want somebody who will feel their anger, but jealousy is out. So.
And as a female, you don't want somebody controlling you in a relationship, and as a male, I'm sure you don't want somebody controlling you in a relationship for the wrong reasons.
Well, as I was saying, there is a natural part of jealousy, but jealousy which has to do with the person, usually is tied up with a romantic relationship. Jealousy can become obsessive, which usually has more to do with one's past, or it can become pathological, in which you're stalking somebody, or you just can't stop phoning them, and you can't let a relationship go.
When it's irrational, it's about trust. You could be married to the most faithful Sam on the planet, but if something inside you fears he's fooling around, when he's not, you can be jealous, and there's no factual...
That's right. Most jealousy has to do with one's own insecurity. It doesn't really have to do with facts. And I counsel lots of couples in which one or the other is fearing the spouse is cheating on them, and the facts just don't bear that out.
But when your spouse does cheat on you, and you walk into a restaurant, and you see the person you love or loved with an other, how can you not be slightly? I mean, if you still like the person, you have to. That's a factor. Obviously, you have to still like the person. But if you walk in and see someone you have had a relationship with, and an intimate relationship, and they're with another.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you've given yourself to that person. There are also situations in which you couldn't stand being with that partner. You're happy to be split up. But if you see your partner walking down the road, you feel jealous.
I know. And sometimes after 3, 4, 5 years, or you hear about them. Well, your ex was in Paris with...
Isn't human nature wonderful?
Yeah, with this beautiful woman, and they had the best time, and she's fabulous.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, it's always a threat.
I don't think so. It's always a threat.
Yeah.
And is it about our security at a deep level?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with attachment, which I've talked about before. And so if we have insecure attachment deep in our childhood in which we feel our needs weren't met or it was unsafe, we can grow up to be very insecure, anxious people, always fearing that someone's going to abandon us. It's interesting, too, because we'll end up choosing individuals who will tend to repeat that pattern or that movie of abandonment. And then why would a person
Sure.
stay with somebody that they fear is going to cheat on them?
But it's very telling if you think you're over somebody,
Yeah.
done,
Yeah.
finished, relationship over, officially,
Hmm.
and then you see them drive by in the red convertible with the new girl,
Yeah.
and you get that feeling.
Sure.
If you are done, you don't get the feeling. You don't care. You think, isn't that swell?
Well, I think
They've got another and they're happy. Great.
Yeah, I think it takes a long time to get over it. Even if you've finished your grieving, I think stirrings can still be there. I don't think love really ever is lost. I think real love is always there. It always stays there to some degree. You can't have standards higher than angels can keep. You know, I mean, you're a human being. You're going to have some of those feelings, even if the relationship was bad.
True.
Yeah.
But when you have a Looney Tune mind like mine, you can make up things that aren't so. Like if you see your ex with another, you can make yourself jealous for all the wrong reasons.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you know what this person is like and what he's like, but when you see him with another, you think, oh, well, yeah, but I bet they are really having fun.
Well, you tend to embellish other people's relationships, don't you?
Oh, always.
Yeah,
What's
yeah,
that about?
yeah. Not even ex-lovers, but even other people's relationships. You tend
Sure.
to think they're having a better time than you are. It's amazing in the counseling therapeutic field just how common the issues are amongst couples.
It's Erica Jong. It's all the fun you think they had.
That's right. That's right.
You think they had.
Yeah.
They're not having
It's
any
your
more fun than
imagination.
you had. You just
That's right.
imagine it. You make a movie.
Well, patterns are repeated if we don't work those out.
Sure. Well, when someone runs off with another, what are you supposed to feel?
Anger, probably.
When you get dumped,
Yeah.
anger.
Sure. A lot of times, especially women I've noticed, will tend to submerge things they already know about the relationship. They have a really sneaking hunch that their partners are cheating on them, but they keep it quiet. They don't confront it for a variety of reasons: security, financial, children, family, status, all of that. But a lot of those women are suffering in silence because they just cannot confront the reality of what's going on.
What do you do if you're in a relationship with a controlling person and every move you make they question?
Yeah.
Every move you make. If
Well-
you go out with your girlfriends for coffee and they think you're up to something,
Yeah.
or you're fooling around,
Yeah.
or you're flirting with other men.
Yeah. Almost 100% of the time, unless, that's an interesting question, because I would say almost 100% of the time that comes from within the individual and his or her own insecurity. However, when a partner is starting to check out and back out of a relationship and the other partner instinctively feels that, intuitively picks that up, that'll make that person more anxious and more hovering, more possessive, and start to think, what are they up to? Because they're picking up that they're moving away from them.
Right.
It's a strange dance we have in relationships.
Very strange. And we're taught to pick up on that.
Of course. It's our
We're
survival.
supposed to be paying attention. You've told me that before.
Yeah.
Please pay attention to the relationship.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
last time you were here, we talked about how can somebody one day wake up and have their spouse say, I'm sorry, I'm done, I'm out of here.
Right. Yeah. There's some,
And you didn't have an inkling.
yeah. I find that one tough. Tough to believe that, because I think there are all sorts of signs along the way. And you'll often find men more along that line than women.
Right.
And that women will be giving signals and signs. I say to women or men, stand up, speak up, step up to the plate. You have a right in this relationship. Take hold of your rights. Say that this is what I need. This is what I want. You're not doing this. Is there something we can do about it?
Right.
Rather than sit there in silence and expect your partner to have a crystal ball to guess.
Your husband is out of town on business.
Yes.
You call the room.
Yeah.
You know his habits.
What are his habits?
You know when he goes to bed, and you know
Oh, I see.
normally what he
Okay.
does, right? I mean,
Gotcha.
you know his
I
patterns
understand.
more than his habits. You know his patterns,
Yeah.
and you know that he's an early to bed guy, and even when he's on the road, he goes to bed early. Now you call the room, 11 o'clock at night, no answer. And at some point, you start to suspect, but if you have a problem with jealousy, I'm sure you get jealous.
I
Or
would
make it up.
But yes, you can. But I would question, where is this lack of trust coming from? Does it have to do with her own issues, deep from within her, that she carries on and carries over into other relationships? Or does it have to do with other patterns in his life in which he's shown himself to be unfaithful? There are so many variables in this. Sometimes you'll find a couple who get into a relationship in which one has stepped out of their marriage and then they go on and get married. There'll always be that seed of doubt that if he left his wife for me, he'll leave me for someone else, or vice versa.
So we transfer it from a past relationship. If
Yeah.
we were in a relationship that ended because our mate, when they left town,
Yeah.
had an affair,
Right.
and one night we called the room,
Then we'll
not
think
we,
that, yeah.
but the person calls the room, and woman answers. Whoops.
Well, that's
Hello.
a different story.
He's in the shower. Ooh.
There's no doubt about that one.
But I think our past relationships are difficult to put aside, and
They
the
form us.
trust factor. If your wife ran off with a neighbor and you have a new wife,
Yeah.
you don't forget what happened to the last relationship.
Oh, absolutely not. We carry the pain from our former relationships into everyone. That's why it's so necessary to grieve and say goodbye to those and work it through. Or we carry that baggage on and on and on.
Really, so you have to reframe. You must have to reframe it. This is not that relationship.
Well,
this is a new relationship.
I call it integrating, because I'll come back to this theme over and over. We tend to choose people to help us work out old movies from our past. There's a reason why somebody would stay with an individual who left their marriage for you and who continues to appear as though he's cheating and coming home late and not being. We stay with a person like that because we're probably trying to work out some other thing in our life in which we were
Sure.
cheated on.
Sure. The adage is, and I don't know if it's true, if he left her for you, he can do it again.
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah.
That's what he does.
Yeah, and vice
So don't
versa.
ever think.
Yeah.
Or if you're having an affair with somebody,
Yeah.
and then it all breaks up and it's all messy and you're the new woman, they'll say, well, remember how you got together. Could happen again.
True. I think jealousy for women is different than jealousy for men.
How
Jealousy,
so?
well, jealousy for women has to do more with the relationship. They can forgive an affair, a one-night stand, much more quickly than a man can. For a man, it's almost territorial. You have, and this isn't. Don't look down on men for this. It's part of our evolution, in which there's a part of us which almost sees our partner as our property, our possession. Men have to overcome that. I'm probably going to get criticized by men for saying this,
Right.
but I think it comes from deep before our caveman days.
So this is my woman.
Yeah, and it has to do with replicating our DNA. It has to do with not being a cuckold. Jared Diamond has lots to say about that. We're one of the few, if not the only, primates that have females have the hidden menses, which allows them to choose a number of sexual partners while finding a daddy who will stay at home to help raise their child, even though it may not be the actual father of their offspring. There's all that stuff in it.
There are some people who are never jealous, I assume. And in a small incident, cocktail party.
Yes.
Your husband is flirtatious. He just is.
Yeah.
And every time he acts like that, you feel left out. You're jealous.
Well, if he's not giving you lots of attention and showering you with love, and if you're not feeling special with him, chances are you'll start to feel neglected if he's giving all sorts of attention to other women, or vice versa, a woman with other men. A lot of it has to do with the amount of nourishment we're getting in the relationship.
Do you think there are men who want you to think that their wife would be mad if?
How do you mean?
By that I mean they say, oh, my wife would kill me. My wife is jealous. My wife is this, because it makes them look more manly, when it's really not the truth.
I really don't.
Or maybe the wife doesn't care.
I don't know how to answer that.
I don't know either.
Yeah, unless it maybe is a good excuse for getting out of an obligation. I don't know.
Could be, but does it enhance your masculinity in a way?
I can't see
In
that
any
as a
way?
man.
No.
But I don't speak for all men. Maybe it does for some. I'm not so sure.
What if one person is jealous and the other person is not in a relationship?
That can create some real problems, and in which you'll get one partner who feels that flirting is in and jealousy is out.
Right.
And those partnerships have a lot of stormy weather to go through.
Because, well,
There's a natural...
don't hang around me at the cocktail party. Go do something. We'll talk later. I see you every day.
Yeah.
Somebody else says, I want you by my side, always.
Yeah, well, that's a bit
walking,
possessive,
watching
yeah.
across the room. You can see it in a couple.
Yeah. But that's obsessive, you know. And I think it takes people to really work hard at getting over that. You need to go back to what's feeding that. And jealousy has a psychological root of abandonment attached to it, whereas envy has a psychological root of depletion. I feel incomplete inside, and therefore I want more and more things.
Right.
So I'm jealous of his wife, I'm envious that he has a better looking wife, has a nicer house, a better car. It's possessions.
I understand. We have a letter. When we come back, we'll read it.
Okay.
We received an email.
Okay.
Dear Dr. David.
Oh my.
Like Dear Dr. Phil.
Oh my. Oh my.
But this is Dear Dr. David. And it's about jealousy, so we pulled it because I think it's just a really good example of how irrational or how confusing jealousy can be.
Oh, sure.
Okay, after the break.
Yep.
Sex therapist and couples counselor Dr. David McKenzie is visiting Studio 4. He is willing to answer your email or snail mail questions on air next time he visits. So here is the drill. Our email address is studio4@shaw.ca. Make sure you put Dr. David in the subject line. And now that I've stopped coughing, I'm thinking it's this jealousy subject.
I think you might be right.
Maybe that's it. You think we'll also open up the lines to you if you have a question, if you're in a situation where jealousy exists, 604-629-4444, or if you're calling long distance from Kelowna, 1-877, or from the island, 1-877-904-7429, and you can ask him any question. And I won't call you Dr. Phil again.
No. I appreciate that.
Okay. Here's a letter we received, you received,
yes,
through us.
Okay.
And she says, Dear Dr. David, I've been married for 4 years to a charming man who I love very much. Lately, I'm feeling more and more jealous about him. I don't like him hanging out with his friends without me, and I worry about him becoming attached to someone he works with. I'm afraid to confront him in case he tells me I'm right, but I can't help worrying that there could be someone else.
Isn't that an interesting question?
Very.
Right, the very last sentence is intriguing when she says she's afraid to ask him in case she's right. There's a real sense of fear there and a real sense that she doesn't trust him, and I wonder where that comes from. If I were seeing her or them in person, I would certainly want to delve into that, where that lack of trust comes from. What were the dynamics of getting into that relationship? Afraid of his being around other people, I would want to know why she feels so afraid.
Right.
Trust, you know, it really comes from within ourselves. And if we're raised in an environment where trust has been betrayed, even other relationships, we carry that on into new relationships, and it's unfair to the new one. Interesting, though, that it reflects what I said before, that a lot of women are afraid to confront the issue in case that they are right. And
what do you say without being accusatory?
Well,
do you tiptoe? I'm not a tiptoer, so I would probably come right out with it. But she says here clearly, I am afraid to confront him.
I think when you feel that way, it is your obligation in a relationship to state your feelings, what you feel, what you think, and give your partner an opportunity to respond to that.
But my experience, and it's not that vast, but I have had some, is if you're afraid because you think it's true, usually you're right. Your hunches, if you trust your gut, you know, it's that ostrich thing. What if he tells me I'm right? Well,
then I think you've got
then you're pretty good. Pretty intuitive. You were right.
But you'd also want to look what's going on in the relationship that your partner would step out of that primary relationship for an affair. Affairs are usually about propping up the primary relationship. As I've said before, they're never about the new, they're always about the old. And affairs cannot remain affairs as long if the primary relationship breaks apart. It's a three-legged stool. So affairs are often the opportunity to reevaluate a marriage and to say what's gone wrong, where can we correct it, is this worth saving? I see it as an opportunity to grow, not as an opportunity to break up the marriage.
What do you make of people who have never felt jealous, ever?
They're good liars. Well, short of saying that they're...
Or self-absorbed.
Yeah. Well, psychopaths cannot feel emotions like normal human beings can. They don't feel anger like you and I do. They feign anger to get their way, or jealousy or sadness.
Right.
So aside from that kind of dysfunction, I would think most people feel it. It's just that some hide it better than others.
What about possession? Owning somebody, owning...
That has to...
when we were teenagers.
Yeah.
You didn't want him, but you didn't want anyone else to have him.
Well, hopefully you left that in teen years.
Hopefully, but I'm not sure we have.
No,
but I remember those
yeah,
feelings. You
yeah.
think, well, I don't even like him anymore, but I don't want her to be going out with him.
Well, it comes from deep insecurity. Controlling other people usually means a controlling personality, and that can be devastating to a relationship. That has to do with the controller. It doesn't have to do with the one who's being controlled.
Okay, we have a question.
Yeah.
Suzanne from Vancouver.
Hello, Fanny. I loved your show. Thank you so much for it. Dr. McKenzie, I've got a friend who, she's got 3 kids, and I just was wondering what my role is as a friend. The last couple of years, the husband's never home. He looks fabulous. He's dyeing his hair. Weekends, she's being told to just go off on trips without him. Nothing solid has ever been said, but what I'm seeing it really taking its toll on my friend and on her children. Like, 2 of the young ones are constantly having tantrums, and they're always... there's sort of a facade going on where that my friend's pretending everything's fine. And so she waits for Daddy to come home for dinner, and the kids are waiting. And it's all about Daddy coming home, and where's Daddy? And Daddy doesn't come home. And when he is home, he wants them all to leave him alone. So I was wondering... is there any role that I should be playing in terms of at least asking her to consider things, to look at something here? Because what happens is she's so protective. It's really a case of, oh, my man, I love him so. She won't hear anything remotely about him. And yet, whether he's having an affair or not, he's definitely withdrawn from the family. And she doesn't want to address it, and she sort of, she acts as if the kids are just fine, and they're not.
I think it's a dangerous course to be on if you start to involve yourself in another relationship. I think the most you can do is be there for her. If you've earned the right to say it, you can address it in terms of, I notice that your husband's not home a lot. How do you deal with that? I don't know how close you are to her, but when you start getting into giving suggestions and advice as this is what she should do, I think that's a dangerous course to be on. You could threaten your own relationship with her. Individuals usually know, as Fanny was saying, there's usually a pretty good suspicion, and it's often accurate, when a partner is cheating. And partners usually don't want to admit that. Until she's ready to admit it and she's ready to deal with it, you cannot make her.
What if she went to him? Do you know him?
I do. Oh, my God.
I know.
Very
but
brave
sometimes...
No, I think it's the wrong thing to do.
It's the wrong thing to do.
You've got to stay out of the relationship. Counselors are advised not to try and give too much advice or suggestion. I think it's a wise thing as a friend to make sure you let her know you're there for her. She can tell you anything. Depending how close you are, you can talk about her relationship. It looks as though she's very lonely. Does he ever come home? Let her bring out the agenda. I wouldn't become too inquisitive, and don't become the doctor to try and fix her up and heal her.
But can't she ask a direct question? Do you think he's having an affair? Like you're good friends, right?
If you're good friends and you've earned the right to say that and you feel comfortable, sure. But I would tend to let the agenda come from her. I would just make yourself available in a loving, caring way.
So you don't do the movie thing where you confront the man and say, if you don't tell her, I will.
Oh,
no.
I think that's a dangerous approach to take.
Exactly, and he's probably going to fib anyway and say, what business is it of yours? And
maybe his wife will get the butt end of that, in which he'll start to take it out on her, wondering that she's telling the neighborhood, giving them her imaginations. It could create real strain in the marriage.
And maybe the affair will just go away, if he's having one.
I think it needs to be confronted. If you think your partner's having an affair, try and get the courage to confront that. I always see relationships in terms of a team, of being mutually supportive. And if there's something missing in that relationship, you want to work as a team to heal that. Not blame each other, but to say, how can we attack this issue of your jealousy? I'm not going to capitulate to it and become someone less than I am, but I'm not going to purposely try to irritate it just to bug you.
Sure, short of hiring a detective.
Yeah,
I guess a simple question is there someone else?
And I think that needs to be addressed.
But would a man tell you the truth?
I know lots of men that would tell the truth. A lot of men and women, and this just isn't a man's deal. This is a woman's issue as well.
Sure.
And there are a lot of men and women who, I find that women lie more than men.
Right.
And that if they're having affairs, men tend to come clean if they're confronted.
Almost relieved, finally I
yes,
can say something?
because they carry guilt about it.
Or is it deny, deny, deny?
When a woman has an affair, she's probably well out of the relationship already. Whereas if a man has an affair, oftentimes it's a way of trying to prop up the primary relationship. That's my experience.
Thank you. Thank you for calling. Jane from Surrey, hi.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Yeah, I just wondered, like, after 25 years of marriage, my husband had from 25 to 30 in our marriage boat, kind of well, definitely an affair, but a different one. Just wondering, what is the percentage that took him back? We're together now. My question is, what is the percentage of him going astray again and of our marriage working?
I honestly don't have percentages to give you. I will say this, that if a couple has worked on the reasons why that affair took place, and they have integrated that, and they've opened up their communication, usually with professional help, the chances of that happening again are extremely reduced. You'll get some individuals, men often will be promiscuous or have affairs or one-night stands out of depression. And so if depression, for instance, is a factor in the relationship, that needs to be addressed. There are a variety of variables as to why people have affairs and one-night stands. And it's impossible, of course, to go into all of them here. But if you've worked through the reasons why that affair took place, there should be very little likelihood it'll happen again.
Oh, good. Thank you very much.
Makes you feel better, right?
I hope so.
And no one knows.
Yeah. Well, it's true. They find that men and women are much more promiscuous in relationships than they think.
Right, but I do hear from couples who say, we had the split. We are now happier than ever before.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
We worked out all of that.
Yeah.
There's more honesty in our relationship, authenticity.
Yeah.
We understand each other more, and it's never been better.
There's
once we could forgive each other.
Well, but there's a process to forgiving. Don't forgive too quickly. There's a process to that. And if you just sweep it under the carpet, chances are it's still there.
And there's new rules. Here's the rules.
Oh, yeah.
These work for me.
It's a new relationship, Fanny.
It is a totally new relationship. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And forgiveness is a wonderful thing, as you know. Here's one more letter.
Oh, sure.
Dear Dr. David, I'm a widow in my mid-60s. My daughter is single, professional, and doing very well. My son, on the other hand, works at the same low-paying job he got right after high school and is supporting a wife and child. My son's wife is very jealous of my daughter. At any family gathering, she makes comments implying that my daughter should be helping them out financially. Lately, it's become really bad. Should I be considering having my children visit on separate occasions just to keep the peace?
Well, maybe she should take out a loan and have her daughter-in-law get psychotherapy.
Okay.
That has much more to do with her daughter-in-law's feeling of depletion and insecurity. That kind of envy can really hurt families, and I've seen it even close to my own family.
That's envy. That's isn't jealousy. This is envy.
That's envy, and that comes from a place of depletion. Comes from a place of feeling inadequate in ourselves. That's why envy, I think, is different from jealousy.
Right, and you just say, well, bottom line, she's insecure.
She's insecure, but people who are that way, who are wanting to accumulate materialism and goods and all sorts of other things, are usually people that feel very inadequate in themselves. And if somebody else comes along that threatens that feeling of inadequacy, they're going to want and covet what they've got.
Right. Is jealousy at the core of most abuse?
Of most abuse?
Abuse. It's
I wouldn't
in
think
there.
So. No, I wouldn't think so.
It's more control. What is it? Power? Power struggle?
As I say, I believe it comes from our deepest pain, which is fears of abandonment, and people will do almost anything to avoid abandonment. There can be violence involved. I think spousal abuse can have that as its root, but most of the time it comes from power, the need to control, which may or may not have jealousy as part of that. Abuse usually always has at its base power issues, whether it's sexual, physical, or emotional abuse, has as the root cause power.
Well, and if you look at couples who are very together. They're individual, and yet they're together, and they don't control one another ever. You don't tell people what to do when they're adults.
True, but I think it takes time. We layer experience on top of things. When I graduated from high school, I said, I'm mature. When I got my BA, now I'm mature. When I got my master's, now. Then I realized that life is simply putting layers of experience on. I'm in a much different place at 59 than I was at 30. I'm much more secure and feel much more adequate now than I did at 25. It's called life. It's called building experience.
It's the journey.
It's the journey.
And it just gets better and better,
You
doesn't
bet.
it?
You bet.
Okay.
Look at yourself.
Look at me and look at you. Nice to see you again.
Good to be
When
here.
you come back, we'll have some letters, some more letters
Oh, I
for
look
you.
forward to that.
Okay.
Good.
Great, thank you. Dr. David McKenzie. Coming up, James Norwood Pratt has carved out a reputation as a consummate spokesperson and fan of teas around the world. He drinks copious amounts of it, writes about it, samples, and simply adores tea, covered cup or not.